Okay, so I just got back from Press Publish NYC, where I had the pleasure of listening to both Casey Neistat and Stephen Bartlett both speak to creators, and these guys could not be any more different. Casey believes in creating content just for the sake of creating. He doesn't obsess over the data, he doesn't look at the numbers, he doesn't even have the YouTube Studio app, whereas Stephen is the complete opposite. He obsesses over the data to inform his decisions. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what I learned from both of them, the tension that exists in their two different philosophies, and how I believe you can combine them to create something special. So Casey's approach is purely artistically driven. In fact, he came out of the gate hot saying that he hates the words creator economy because that makes it more about the economy than the creator. In fact, his 3 core beliefs can be summarized down into this. You should share what genuinely excites you. If you don't actually have the creative desire to share something, then why even make anything about it? He resents how all the creators these days have turned into money-grabbing machines, I guess, or just people who are motivated by the money that you can make from making something rather than the process of making it. In fact, he thinks that this can actually kill the spark, which is his second core belief, that you have to protect the spark. Whatever is inspiring you to create, nourish that, because if you lose that, what do you really have? And his third core belief, the process is the product, meaning that if you fall in love with doing the thing itself, rather than the results, you will get a better result. And all of his points really resonated with me because when I first started creating content, I really thought about it from a business standpoint, like I'm going to do this so that I can make money. But deep down inside, I've always wanted to create, and not because of money. That's like a nice side effect, but I really wanted to create just for the sake of creating. So whenever Casey spoke, it just really resonated with me and just cut through right to my heart. Okay, now Stephen has the complete opposite approach. He believes that failure is the best teacher, and the only way to know what failure is to look at the numbers. Now, the best thing that he shared with us is that he has this team that he calls the failure team. And the whole point of this team is to fail. And what that means is just try new things until they get to something that works. And I love this concept because anyone that's done anything knows that you don't just start off successful. First, there's going to be a long line of failures that you have to go through in order to get something that works. And by calling this team the failure team, he essentially takes all the pressure off of succeeding and makes the whole goal just to experiment. I love this concept, and I think it's a really good lesson to learn because failing is the only way to get to success. And the fact that he has a whole team and their job is to just try new things all the time. And I think that's something that we as creators should always be doing, trying new things, not being afraid that they're going to fail. In fact, knowing that a lot of times they probably will fail, but eventually there will be some success at the end of the line. And this leads us to his second point, which is that you have to sweat the small stuff in order to get compound gains. And I love this example because of how huge the compound gains actually can be. So he took this concept of experimenting, and one of the experiments that he ran on his podcast was monitoring the CO2 levels in the room. He realized that if the CO2 levels get too high, then the level of the conversation can go way down. So he started monitoring that and putting in more oxygen in the room whenever he noticed CO2 levels getting way too high. This led to having way better conversations and a way better experience for the guests that elevated the whole podcast who knows how much. And my favorite thing about Stephen Bartlett's talk was that the first 2 points were just illustrations of the same exact principle. It's that you have to experiment all the time, and don't be afraid to experiment with the small stuff because it can lead to huge compound gains. And his third point is that you have to stick to your principles. He gave the example of how he turned down a $100 million offer because he believed that he could achieve the same exact thing with his team, and he didn't want the investors to limit his ability to experiment. Essentially, what Stephen does is he identifies truths and he takes them down and boils them down into principles. And then he sticks with those because he just believes in himself and knows that those can be applicable everywhere. So he teaches us to look for universal truths or principles and make sure that we stay true to them. Okay, so this is where the tension really exists, and here's why it's fascinating. Casey creates fearlessly, but potentially limits his reach, whereas Stephen optimizes massively, but risks losing his creative spark. And most creators struggle with this. Like true artists oftentimes struggle to find their audience, And optimizers often lose their unique voice. And this can be seen across all the creators that spoke at the panel. We had Kevin from YouTube come up and talk about how true authenticity still wins, whether it's Japanese precision walking or bridges that are too low for trucks. The weird, quirky, authentic stuff is what really breaks through. Yet Ashley from Nami Matcha talked about how strategic testing saved her business. She didn't just launch into nothing. She used data and numbers from her audience to validate her idea before she actually did anything. And even the storytelling panel touched on this. They said that, yes, you should protect your creative spark at all costs, but at the end of the day, you should realize that you're asking for your audience's eyes and ears. So strategy really matters. Okay, so here's how I'm combining both of these different philosophies and bringing them together in my head. Steven said something that really stuck with me. He said that you need to find information in a world where the correct answer is changing at an increasing speed. But Casey's approach is the thing that protects the creative core and makes the content worth optimizing in the first place. So here's what I learned. You need both, just at different stages. At first, create like Casey. No pressure, just pure experimentation, and share what you are genuinely excited about. But then optimize like Steven and run experiments. You should do everything you can to make sure that the content that you're making is getting out to the people that you want it to. And the real magic happens when creativity meets strategy. So that's what I learned at the event. And I'm going to leave you with the story that Steven told us about his friend playing padel. Him and his buddies all went out to the course one day, and he had this one friend who was really bad, and he was making all the silly mistakes that you can possibly make. It wasn't on anything complicated or hard. It was just the simple stuff that he was messing up. So Steven told him to take this mindset shift and tell yourself that that doesn't matter after every single point, win or lose. And after the friend started doing that, he started beating everyone, by far became the best player on the court. And I love that story because it just illustrates the key is not avoiding failure. It's about not letting that failure carry you over into your next attempt. So that's what I learned from Steven and Casey. But I'm curious, which philosophy resonates with you more? Are you more like creative like Casey, or are you more strategic like Steven? And where do you see yourself kind of leaning towards more on any given day? I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for staying to the end and watching this video. This is my first long-form talking head video, and I'm beyond excited to do it. So if you like this kind of stuff, give me a follow, and I'll be back with more soon.